roll call.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Jill Zitzelberger,
Here.
Trisha Braun, Brian Wallace,
Here.
Chris Thomas,
Here.
Kevin Phelps, Chris Zellner.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is minutes. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
We have a second. All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is public comment. We do have one public comment here, and I do want to make a note for those that are in the audience. If anyone was planning on or anticipating that tonight was an open session on, not an open session, public hearing, thank you very much, on the request by Forward Development Group, that has already occurred, but an April 1st session is going to be planned for the board if you have a comment to make on that. Anyone else have comments, please fill out a sheet and turn it in to Lauren or I. 3 minutes on the item or on any item that anyone wants to speak on, and I think, Don, you're our first speaker today.
Say it over again. Hello. Don Tierney, 3564 Egry Road, DeForest, Wisconsin. It's not a public hearing tonight, but I just wanted to say that the deal with Forward Group, I had discussion with Connor a couple times today. There was some things I asked him to kind of try to push the, instead of 20, go to 30 feet. And the other thing we talked about was to maybe sharpen up the gables and make them look good. And you seem very receptive, but we'll let that go to see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Any other public comments tonight? All right, seeing none, let's go on to the first business item. Discuss and take action on request by Forward Development Group LLC to approve a certified survey map, a rezone from A1 to planned unit development, and amend the existing Woodland Crest general development plan to include the newly created lots 1 and 2. And this is an item for recommendation to the village board. So, Lauren.
Okay, so as it says, there's quite a bit going on with this request. Starting out with the CSM would create 4 new lots, lots 1, 2, and 3 in outlot 4. Lots 1 and 2 would be used for multifamily development of approximately 125 total market rate units. And then lot 3 would be part of an expected land sale to Kilkenny Farm subdivision to create an additional 4 single family lots, which has already been conditionally approved via CSM. And then outlot 4 would be dedicated to the public for stormwater management. The rezoning right now, like most empty lots, it's A1 agricultural holding district. This would be to rezone it to PUD and amend the existing Woodland Crest GDP to include these new lots. And staff is seeking input from the commissioners on their perspective about the planned site as an appropriate transitional use from the single family homes on Dolan Avenue. Issues to consider include the visibility and buffering of the 3-story apartment building from the single family homes along Dolan Avenue, just due to the size of the building and the downward slope from the proposed building to the backyards of Dolan Avenue homes. Noting that at least one of our consultants has noted that relying solely on a landscape buffer could take 10 to 20 years for the full effect to occur. So there are a few other notes in the attachments. But really what we're looking for tonight, we don't have a recommendation or a recommended motion. We're really looking for the commission to provide guidance on the visibility and buffering issues. And if found acceptable to the members of the commission, then issue a recommendation to village board.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for in the packet, all of the comments that you included for us to review. Let's open it up for discussion. And should we ping pong? Chris, do you have anything that you'd like to ask?
Is there a map in the packet? This to maybe show what the changes are, what it was, and what it's going to become. Looks like it's maybe page 26. I don't know if maybe you could walk us through that a little bit, just so I have a better understanding of what we're talking about here.
Okay, so Jared is sharing the map of the proposed development. Lot 1 on the CSM is lot 5.1 on this map. Lot 2 is 5.2, and then 5.3 is the land deal with Kilkenny Farms. And there are, we do have Connor from FDG here to answer any questions. They have made one amendment based on their conversations with Kilkenny Farms, made one amendment to the GDP looking to, instead of a 20-foot setback for the rear yard, looking at a 30-foot setback, and kind of shifting it towards the front, towards Simon Crestway. So a 12-foot front yard instead of 20-foot.
Okay, thank you. Connor, do you want to walk us through the changes? Okay, thanks.
Connor Kearney here for development. Appreciate another round of review here and discussion on the Phase 2 multifamily of Woodland Crest. What you see here this evening is generally consistent with the concept plan that was reviewed back in November of 2023, and then also when the GDP was reviewed in February. And what we've done, you'll note the main updates that you'll see, and actually this might be beneficial. I have some handouts that Lauren has these exhibits on the screen, but at least this way you'll have something in front of you. These are the updates. Cleanly.
Thank you.
Here, I'll go ahead and share.
So you note, based on the first, shown in the first 2 pages here, and as Don mentioned, the discussions that we've had earlier, the importance of that buffer between Kilkenny Farms, it's notable. It's a sensitive relationship. We want to work to provide the appropriate buffering space, which is the reason between the 60-foot landscape easement that we're setback that we're proposing on the larger multifamily building to the south. Standard rear lot setbacks per zoning would be 40 feet. We're proposing 60 feet to give it even more room in addition to the landscape buffer that Lauren had mentioned. As it relates to the lower density product to the north and the flat style multifamily buildings, those are the ones that we were discussing earlier and that Don had mentioned. The relationship to those 4 single family home lots is what we made that update to here recently. So rather than a 20-foot front yard setback, what we're proposing is a 12-yard front yard setback. Given that the buildings are 2 stories, lower density, we're proposing to move them closer to Simon Crestway and further away from the single family residences along Dolan Avenue. This would give us a 30-foot rear yard setback, which is the number that in discussions with Don felt was appropriate for this relationship. We believe with this change, it does benefit the relationship with those lots on Dolan Avenue. That's the first and second page of the handouts that you've received. We've also included a rendering exhibit that was hot off the press from our architect in discussions with village staff. And as a result of the technical meetings, they'd felt that a view of the 3D rendering from the what would be the southeast portion of the site for the multifamily building would be helpful to see. And what you'll note here that this is that view of, this would be the 3-story garden style multifamily building, essentially phase 2 of the crest that is across Simon Crestway currently. And then this is looking from the Dolan Avenue properties across. And I did want to make one clarification. The structure you see right there, the masonry enclosure that's landscape screen, that is a trash enclosure as you go into the underground structure. It is not a retaining wall. That's part of the site plan that you'll note as well. Thirdly, on the packet you have is an updated schematic utility page. And you'll note this is very similar to the one that you reviewed back in February. But with one addition, and it's a looping structure to the Dolan Avenue properties. Currently, Dolan Avenue is along dead-end cul-de-sac, so this proposed update allows the water main service to be looped, increasing the serviceability of the Dolan Avenue lots and Highlands and the Flats product that is located here on proposed Lot 1 of the CSM. What this also does, by moving the buildings close, it removes any need for a retaining wall on the stacked flat style multifamily site. And as I mentioned, reduces the scale and moves those buildings closer to Simon Crestway. So that's a broad overview of the changes. Everything else is generally consistent with what you've previously reviewed last month.
Okay, thank you for these, very much. Chris, questions?
Yeah, so, right now is everything 5.1 to 5.4 outlot 4 zoned A1 agriculture? And are we looking potentially change that for all of them now or not for the part that's gonna be going to kill?
So can you put up the CSL? Essentially, all of the land at this point is still in the zoning classification that it was in when it was annexed. So all of 1, 2, 3, and then outlot 4. The rezone for the land in lot 3 there, that would be the land that ultimately would be sold to Kilkenny Farms. I believe that this body has conditionally approved that change to residential zoning, but that's all conditioned upon, and then I think the village board has too, or that's conditioned upon the sale of the land. So that would essentially be zoned in the same way that the other residential lots in Kilkenny Farms are zoned. And then lots 1 and 2 are proposed to be rezoned effectively just a multifamily development. I think those are the only permitted uses that are identified within the GDP without lot 4 being stormwater management. So the rezoning, I think, all makes sense from the staff perspective. It all fits with the comp plan, fits with the understanding of how this would happen. I think the issues are, the setbacks, which obviously, to be clear, village staff hasn't had a chance to review the proposed updated setbacks. I'm guessing that village staff would look at the 30 feet on the backside and say, that's fantastic. I'm not sure how planners would look at the 12 feet on the front side. And then some of the points that were made by MSA and Strand in the staff memo regarding exactly what it's going to be like to look at the multifamily on Dolan Avenue that would be built. I think more on lot 2, I think is what the comments are getting at. And to be clear, you have the discretion to approve this tonight if you want to. I guess I'm focused more on some of the comments by Strand where essentially they weren't really able to evaluate exactly what is this going to look like. And, it is important, whatever the village wants, well, first of all, it's going to be Plan Commission, Joint Plan Commission, then Village Board. But whatever the bodies want on this as it relates to how is this going to look if I live on Dolan Avenue and I'm looking at the multifamily on lot 2, we need to make sure that we have it tied up in the GDP. Because if the village ultimately approves a GDP and then all of a sudden we get to the SIP and we have a room full of people who are saying the building's going to look too big, if the SIP is consistent with the GDP, there's nothing that this body, because the SIP only comes to the Plan Commission, it doesn't go to the village board. You would be put in a position to have to approve something because it would be consistent with the GDP. So I think that's why you see a lot more comments in the memo from MSA and Strand as it relates to the height, because my recollection is they just haven't been able to really evaluate it. And there is language in our code that allows us to, when we're considering PUDs for residential development, there's a lot of different things that we look at, but one of them is, will the development create an attractive residential environment of sustained desirability and economic stability, including structures in relation to terrain, consideration of safe pedestrian flow, and it goes on to talk about also, how does it relate to other property, but the issues that Strand has and MSA have raised in the staff memo are clearly within the GDP review process. So again, you have discretion to act, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of the GDP is the time to look at this, because we don't want to be in a position where we've approved a GDP and SIP comes in that's consistent with the GDP and all of a sudden it looks like the buildings are too high in relation to the residential lots in Kilkenny.
Thank you. Yeah. Other questions, Chris? No, Chris Zellner.
Couple of questions on that. So I understand the moving 30 feet in the back towards the Dolan Avenue, going forward towards Simon Crestway. These are all residential places. Can you give me a feel for how close they are to the road? Are they similar to what we have over with our new development over here by McDonald's? From a distance perspective off the road?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I don't.
I just want to make sure that we're not creating a different safety concern because we're putting something that's a residential closer to the road that's going to be a main thoroughfare, especially if and when grocery store goes just right by it. So there's going to be considerably more traffic there. So that's a little bit of a concern for me right now. Just I'm assuming they're going to have access to go out the back side of the building.
Correct, correct.
I also drove over there. I saw that the ponds are already there at the bottom, which are great. But as I looked, I was getting a feeling of, as I looked from the road, the houses that are there currently were well below where the actual base land is right now. Is it anticipated then that we're going to come down a little bit with that land still, or is that pretty much where it's going to be at this point? From a grading perspective?
Oh, you're saying the homes on Dolan Avenue lower in
Yeah, I look at,
comparison,
I
or?
mean, you're looking at the tops of their roofs are below where the land is right now. So
Right.
it's gonna sit very high up from them. And I understand with the picture that you're showing what that's gonna look like from right there, but the
Yep.
rest of those houses too, I'm considering what they're looking up at with a wall of apartments. So that's.
Yep.
So I don't, is that where the grade is slated to be right now? Is it all done pretty much?
Yeah, I believe the top of that basin, we can't change any of those. That's set with the master stormwater plan. It has to do with the regional drainage that's heading to that basin on outlot 4. But we did submit a draft grading plan to staff as well. That wasn't included in this memo here, but it does show proposed grades and how it would transition. It generally would sit where it's at right now, and you'd work back since it's kind of established as a tabletop. But there would be nuances to the site. You'd have to cut where you'd have to go down and slope for the underground parking and so on and so forth.
Okay. So the vegetation they talked about, that it's a several 10, 20 years plan
Mhm.
for that vegetation. Do you guys own a tree spade that you can put in big trees?
We do not, but what I can tell you from my past life, practicing, landscape architecture is, the maximum diameter of tree, you're actually encouraged to plant a little bit smaller of a diameter of a tree to better establish. The larger ones have, more risk of dying off once they reach an age of like 5 to 8 years because of you're planting them when they've already matured somewhere else. We haven't had any issues. We do like up to, I think it's a 4-inch caliper or a 6-inch caliper that we've seen on the max size for the canopy trees that we've planted, for example, for like terrace trees amongst right of ways. That's kind of what we'd envision for that specific area. The greater than required rear yard setback was another way to address that issue as well. We knew that landscaping is going to take time to mature, but ordinance would require in conventional zoning that 40-foot setback. We're proposing that it be 60 to even push that building further, knowing that the landscaping would take time to mature and come in.
Okay, that's it for now for me.
Brian,
When you talk about 60, you're talking about the garden sale, that's in lot 2, right?
Correct. Yep. Mike.
When you're talking about 60-foot setback in the rear yard, you're talking about the garden style, which is on lot 2. Can you explain, or maybe staff can explain, I'm seeing here for the stacked that our zoning standards are 40-yard rear or 40-foot rear yard setbacks. And you're proposing 30. Is that a variance we gotta work out, or?
The village has the ability to approve different setbacks as a part of a PUD without going through the variance process, but it is different, so from that standpoint, it is a variance from the standard setbacks. I believe that the developer has utilized R5 as kind of the framework and is working from that.
Okay. Yeah, I like the development. I am a little concerned what and I think that's been a comment all the way through as far as the height and what we can do to buffer that. And, You know, I don't know if there's some berming and stuff, you're already on a slope. I'm at a loss of what can be done to help clean that up.
So not everyone had a chance to go over the initial grading plan because it was something we requested after the tech staff meeting, but the planner from MSA does say in their email that they would recommend language requiring a berm of at least 3 feet tall above the lowest building floor elevation east of the building, with plantings with considerations for some fast-growing trees, including a mix of deciduous and conifers. Or as an alternative option, could be to require opaque fencing along the property line with landscaping. So that was based on the preliminary grading plan. That was MSA's recommendation.
Yeah, I guess I would stay away from fencing, but if you could find a way to increase elevation along the footing of the building and then plant on top of that to exaggerate that growth, and really, I'll call litter, the slope with vegetation might, you know, in a way, maybe give it a hillside look behind the houses.
All right, Joe.
My concern is basically the same that everybody else has had. I do have just a couple of clarifications. On this, since you're gaining 10 feet in the back here, and losing 8 feet on the front, is that other 2 feet being taken out of parking or?
That's something that we're hopeful with our civil engineer to be able to shift slightly. You'll note that there is a little bit of room on what would be the south end of the site. The building, those 2 buildings further south, if we could shift those slightly more south, we may be able to pick up that 2 feet.
Okay.
Essentially that 2 feet is our tolerance right now. Once
Sure.
we get into CAD, once we get the surveyor out there, we're confident that we can pick up that 2 feet. The 10 feet was just too hard to swing.
Okay. And then on this sheet that you passed out, there's the couple items noted for tonight. Are the rest of them all things we've approved already, or is there?
Those were, that's what went in front of the commission, I believe it was February 12th.
Okay,
The items in red are the only changes.
okay. Just wanted to make sure of that. Other than that, yeah, I would reiterate the same thoughts that Brian had. The berm's not a bad idea.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily against the fence, but in doing so, that kind of makes that a concrete, fixture through there.
Right.
Whereas going with landscaping materials instead, if a homeowner wants to put up a fence, then it's up to them.
Sure.
All right, I think that leaves me for questions. On page 28, there is a elevation shown. That would you mind going to page 20? I don't know who's got control of the computer.
Yeah.
I think it's a couple pages down, so 28. Yep, there you go. So that top elevation on the right-hand side, it looks like that is, I'm guessing since that's Hill, Dolan Avenue would be on the right side of that. Are we looking at 3 stories plus a partial basement? I assume that's a parking structure. It's definitely foundation parking structure. So if I'm standing on Dolan Avenue, am I seeing 3 stories and a peak and some of the exposed basement?
That's not the intent, no, and that is misleading. That's the trash enclosure. That it's the same structure that you see on the rendering
Okay,
on the front left of it area there. It's used in that location heading into the underground parking. It is not the intent to have that as another floor or another level. It's just a structure that's on the site plan.
okay, so it will, I mean, it's a large building to begin with. It is a large massing if you're standing in any of those backyards, even with the additional setback, but it is just the first floor of residences and up that you'll be seeing from Dolan Avenue then.
Correct.
All right, with a 12-foot front yard setback, what do you see as the challenges to that? From a pedestrian standpoint, from a just a living standpoint. That's not ideal, right?
Right. It really, the first thing that we checked when we looked at if this was a possibility was any easements. I think the request would have been a 10-foot if there weren't any easements, but there is a utility easement that's up there. That's a 12-foot easement. That's the driving factor between it. Typically you'd see a shorter setback, 10 feet or less in an urban setting where you're activating a streetscape, making it a quick, or convenient access for the pedestrians in an urban setting. It comes down to public safety from the right-of-way standpoint. We see it as the commercial area is condensed into that block. The grocery area would be condensed. It'd be high school traffic that we hope wouldn't be moving too quickly. It can be viewed as an amenity for those residential tenants as ease of access to the commercial amenities across as well, if proper precautions are taken from a safety standpoint. We approached this issue in a development we did in the village of Windsor, and it was a senior living development. It was a corner site, so a little bit more challenging on the setback side of things. But we had a closer setback to the right of way, and we actually put a flagging system in addition to the crosswalk too. So it had an electronic flagging system that would flash when any resident would pass. So there's creative ways you can address it from a public safety concern. But we feel the density of those units and the 60 units there, if we were talking about 200 plus units, it'd be a different story, but we feel confident that it's a good amenity.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I think the point about the landscaping of, a berm is nice. 3 feet gets you that much more tree height to begin with. I do like a deciduous tree, but they're pretty bare in the wintertime, and so no buffering there whatsoever. Larger trees, better.
Yep.
For sure. Lauren, you had a whole list of questions there. Did your questions get adequately answered? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yes, there are some that we probably would like to take back to the tech staff team and the consultant team, just to make sure that they're comfortable with some of the changes that have been made because they've been made since the tech staff meeting.
Okay.
I don't know because the staff's changed, but the Laurel, I think we had a shorter setback on the site, on the front yard setback for that. Right?
No, I know that's the Steve Brown Apartments. I'm not sure what the,
Yeah, and it had to do with the sidewalk and stuff, but I thought,
With utility.
yeah, I thought there was a reduced setback on that one as well.
I feel like taking a tape measure and going around to different apartments and seeing what does it actually look like and feel like from a pedestrian standpoint and from a visibility standpoint. So our request here is to provide advice on this. We don't need to make a motion on it tonight. Am I correct about that? And can we send it back to tech staff and consider it again? Let me ask you, what is your timeline? If we send it back and consider it again and ask you to bring it back to us next month, is that going to group things up?
No, we're happy to do whatever you feel is appropriate. From our perspective, as mentioned earlier, the transaction with Kilkenny is, their approvals are conditioned upon that transaction occurring, which is conditioned upon these approvals occurring. We would like to move that transaction forward such that Kilkenny can approve those lots and begin construction as soon as possible this spring. We're excited to get going on the multifamily units. We have our development team ready to go. We've started the equity and debt financing portion. So we're chomping at the bit to go, but we want to make sure everything's addressed appropriately. So in a perfect world, a recommendation or a motion with conditions would be better than essentially tabling it for another, month or two. And those conditions obviously could be whatever you see fit, but we're committed to addressing every item that you would like us to.
Okay. All right. And if we want to take another shot at the GDP, we can do that at the board level?
yeah, but you sit here right now, you don't know what the elevations look like.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how we can work that in as a condition of approval, because at the end, you are effectively giving us carte blanche and really no guidance then as to what, because to me, that's the big question is like, and it's probably going to be, you can't really comment on it until you actually see it, but what's going to be satisfactory to you from a recommendation? Because This body recommends to the Joint Plan Commission, and then the Joint Plan Commission recommends to the village board. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind on this is if the Joint Plan Commission is not satisfied with the GDP, the village board cannot approve it by our own ordinance. So I would think that at the Joint Plan Commission level, and I know I have not been at recent Joint Plan Commission meetings, but I have been at some in past years where this height issue was of paramount importance to Westport. And it would seem to me like you all at this body and they all at that body need to know what is this gonna look like so that you have clarity in what the GDP says, because that's going to be exceptionally important when the SIP comes forward, because that's really when you're going to see how is this going to impact the adjacent properties. And theoretically, you may have more people in the room tonight being like, wait a second, I want to see how this is affecting my home. And there's, I mean, and this all comes back to language in the comp plan that makes clear that this land east of Simon Crestway, but west of the residential subdivision is supposed to be a transitional area. And that's beyond my level of planning knowledge, other than I know that's what the comp plan says. And I know that's something that the planners have been focused on throughout this process.
Thank you. All right. What do you guys think? Back next month? Think so, Connor?
I would just, one comment that was very pleasant for me to see tonight was the fact that we have two developers that were talking and working things out together before this even came before us, which is good to see. And it's also important to acknowledge that the Tierneys worked with Forward Development Group to get a plan that works for them. And the Tierneys have a lot to lose with it because their lots are the ones that are going to be right by this. So the fact that they came with it together, I think is a strong
Really good.
statement to us.
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah. All right.
Well, I appreciate the feedback, and if there's anything other than these elevations, the detailed sections, the renderings, we feel like we provided a lot, but if there's anything more in working with staff that you'd need to better inform the next meeting, do not hesitate to reach out.
All right. Thank you very much, Connor.
Thank you.
Can I ask one
Yes.
question?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And this is just because I know Dolan kind of elevates a little bit. So, you know, when I look at the plan here, you've got 60 foot on the, I guess I'll call it the garden style, right? 60 foot of transition from backyard to the building, which is quite an area to build up and do some sort of landscape buffer there. The only area that's really probably a pinch point is at the far north end of the stacked. I don't know if you can show the plat part of it. I don't know what page that is.
It's 2 pages before. Yeah.
Yeah, 26. One more.
Mhm.
You know, if you look at it from that perspective, and your drawing, your submittal here that you have with is a little better, but that is really the pinch area where those, and if you look at the proposed lots, it's lot 1 for Kilkenny that is backing right up to that.
Mhm.
You know, lot 2, you know, in theory, could be backing up towards the north more, so who knows how it gets built, right? So that's really the area where I see a buffer, and maybe it's a mix of, you know, you mentioned fence, right? Maybe there's a mix in there, because I don't know, that elevation may not be as steep, plus those garden soils are only two stories versus
Correct.
3 on the. So I think we're close, I would say.
Yep.
Just seeing what some of that rendering might look like.
Sure.
Thanks, Connor.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next month. All right. All right, next item, discuss and take action on the final plat of the 6th addition to Heritage Hills, and this is an item for recommendation to the village board.
So Heritage Hills is requesting approval of a final plat, well, the Viridian is requesting approval of a final plat for Heritage Hills 6th edition, which totals 46 lots for single-family detached and twin homes. It also includes 4 outlots dedicated to private alleys, open space, public open space, and future development. It would be the 7th phase of development for Heritage Hills. This one does not come with an amendment to the GDP SIP. However, it will require a new developer agreement between the village and the developer. And that should be ready by the time it goes to village board, I believe. And we did want to provide a little bit of update because there were some triggers to the phasing that were included in previous developer agreements, that certain things had to be done by certain points in the development process. So Division Street intersection has been completed. Division Street construction, Verlene to Lexington, that has been completed. The Schumacher Road improvements, it's supposed to be completed about 75% build out. We're not quite there yet. And the development hasn't reached Schumacher Road yet, so there's still a little bit of time for that. And then there's with Nord Drive sewer upsizing. It's not a concern at this time, but with phase 7, once that begins construction, we would need to reevaluate the sewer flows or plan for upsizing. But that's where we are on those. And then the triggers for park construction have all been met as well.
Great.
Um,
All right.
So and I can share this as well, but so staff is recommending conditional approval of the plat subject to all staff comments resolved to the satisfaction of the community development director, as well as a developer agreement to go before the village board.
Okay, we've got Viridian Hills here. So, Viridian, do you guys want to walk us through?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Dan Day from D'Onofrio Cockney Associates, representing Viridian Homes. Also with me is Matt Brink, Director of Land Development from Viridian. Here with the 6th ad plat, or the 7th phase for this. This is a little perspective. Browning Boulevard coming off of Main Street is extended to that location right there right now. So now we're just starting to move forward on Browning, getting to the opening part of the big neighborhood park here to the northwest on here. This section of the neighborhood is predominantly twins between a normal twin product and also the Haven product. So this is where we're kind of branching into the neighborhood, into that section of it. We did some minor tweaking with the general development plan, which affected this just a little bit, but not greatly. But this is predominantly twin product in this area. Seen heavy demand for the Haven product, which this is going to be about half of this, I think, is about Haven product. So that's good. We have a lot of challenges with grades in this area for the Haven product. So that's why a lot of that switching happened with the revised GDP. We do have 5 single family homes where we're starting into the single family in the northeast corner of this plat. So we're just really tying into that. Been working extensively with Mr. Bronig and Peggy on all of the sewer layouts and the trail layouts and how the basins are working out in front of their place there. So that's been an ongoing discussion point, but this is where we're at today for the phase 7 of the development, or the 6th ad plat. We're ready to get the development agreements going through the village board so we can get rolling here.
All right. So oops, we lost it. That's all right. Going back, so the single family development, then I'm going to guess 230 through 237.
Yes, and then just west of that, west of Evergreen Terrace, those 3 lots also facing there are single family. I guess it's 226, 231, and 232.
Okay, and which are slotted for the Haven?
The Haven would be in this area, are going to be lots 262 on the bottom to 271. And then also 252 to 261. No, sorry. The 238 to 245.
Okay.
Yeah, so that block face on Cozy Farm Road. The lots to the north of that have a lot of grade transitions. Lots on the west, or just on the east side of Browning Boulevard, also have a lot of grade transitions. So those will be tuck under twins.
Okay. Okay, tuck under twins garage on the bottom.
That is correct. Yeah, we did those in phase 5, and I think we're about halfway through those right now.
Okay, great. So questions, Joe?
Outlets 28 and 29, what's the intent? They just seem to be in kind of a strange spot, so I'm assuming there's a
Yeah, there's a big
Sorry.
master plan to it. I wish I would have put a part of the packet and drawn out on our master plan what this is, because that would have been helpful to you also. Let me try to envision this here for you a little bit. The neighborhood park really starts just north. It's part of Outlet 28. Okay, so that's just the one finger that comes down, buffers Browning Boulevard. So there's a nice green view corridor as you're coming up Browning that you can then see into the neighborhood park. Let me just point.
Yep.
That's that outlot right there. And then the one to the south is just kind of the green corridor as it comes up from the Haven Park that we've got installed down here in the south end. It's kind of a green corridor as we go up north into the main neighborhood park.
Seeing that makes things much.
Thank you for
much
putting that
clearer.
up. That's greatly appreciated.
That was the blank screen earlier. It was up and then my computer decided it didn't like it. So
Oh, okay.
just
It's a big file,
redid it.
so.
Yeah.
Other questions, Joe?
No, I think that pretty well covers it for now.
Brian?
How many, is there additional lots added into this phase now from what was originally platted?
In this area, so no, it was more to the north where we had some additional pickup
Last
lots.
time you were here, you added lots, yep.
Yep, it was more up to the north of this a little bit, yeah. This is pretty much the same as what was there.
So this is as per the original
Yep.
documents. And so just so I understand here, so 238 through 245 is going to be what?
The Haven twin, so it's targeted for 55 and older.
And is that, when you say a twin, is that sitting on 40 feet?
So that is,
Or-
each lot is got connected building, right? So there's
Okay.
2 units,
So
Two lots.
38 and 39 is an attached building.
correct, yes.
And what about 52 to 252 to 261? Same thing?
Yeah,
That'd be the north side of that.
yes, that's the same thing, but there are two different products. One's got the alley behind it for alley access garages. The other one is front load, so the garages will be up front. And those will actually all have walkouts to the south.
Okay. And then 262 through 271, are those just single family or?
Nope, those are all twin
Twins as
Haven
well.
product. Yep.
Can
Yes.
you, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, how many have been built and would potentially be built with all of these that are what we call the twin or the Haven? How many of those buildings are out there?
Do you have that stat in front of you? Can you go back? I'll take a guess based on the map if you can. Go back to the overall. So looking back, the Haven product is those 2 blocks and then the blue and the southern piece here. So with this, I think we'll be 2/3 of the way through of the Haven. Right now, I'd guess we're about 1/3 of the way through, just kind of looking at the map. I don't have exact numbers, but that's kind of my gut feel to it.
I have no more questions.
Chris?
I'm pretty easy tonight. How far are we from getting the Schumacher Road that we're punched through to it?
Probably at least a couple years, I think. I see us wanting to target our phasing to go north, so we will be to here and we will be to here. And I think if it makes sense to me, we'd continue up Brenning, but and then do single family to the east of those purple lots there, to the east of that. I don't see us really wanting to connect out to Schumacher. And I really want to get a better read on the DOT and their improvements in 2026 before we do.
What's your forecast right now as far as how many homes you believe will be done this year? Or what's the anticipated number?
I think Matt's got some better numbers on that.
Yeah, so good evening, Matt Brink with Viridian Homes. Nice to see everybody again. So between phase 6 and 7, we'll be doing another 71 lots for this year. And as far as absorption that we've received over the last year or so, phase 3, there are 5 lots left to be dug out of 32. Phase 4, which was all of our Haven, kind of on the south side of the park there, all of those lots have been dug at this point. And then phase 5, our recent phase that we just completed, we've already dug 19 out of the 45 lots there. Demand continues to be strong, even in all the challenges that we know are going on in the marketplace. Waunakee is obviously a very desirable place. That certainly hasn't changed. And we are still full speed ahead. So we're expecting good absorption with these 2 phases as well.
Thank you.
All right. Chris? What? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And you're here because you want to construct that this year.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
so to Chris's question, Cozy Farm Road, I believe it is. I'm not sure if you want to poke that one through first, but I mean, now you're like half of that's being built this year.
Correct. So
Get to Schumacher.
it's all right. Yeah, we're about halfway down there. We don't, I mean, we gotta be careful not to put too much of the Haven product online. I mean, that's one thing that we don't, want to always make sure of, is that we don't have too much product sitting out there, in one circumstance. So I think this will probably do us for a year at least, and then maybe 2 years on the Haven product is my guess.
So that's the,
That's
it's
an
an
educated
educated
guess,
farm
but-
or it's whatever the one there to the north, that's is it Patrick or something? No, at the far north end that comes out. Is that Patrick? What is that called?
Berlin goes all the way
Oh, is that
across.
Berlin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're a ways on that one yet, probably.
Yeah, I would suspect that, you know, part of the reason for the shift with the grades and stuff, but also to densify a little bit there on the north of the Haven and east of Breinig. You know, with the current market, we're thinking that the market's going to tilt a little bit more towards the lower priced product in the neighborhood, which that's going to be probably the target of where we want to be at, is in there. I mean, I think the sales kind of back that up. That's where probably the most quickest success will be over the next couple of years.
I suppose you don't want to commit to.
No.
Well, I was gonna ask for
If
a
you can
different
tell me which
commitment.
buyers are gonna come through in the next 6 months, we can then predict, but
Yeah.
that's a tough one.
Chris?
Operational questions, I guess. Will there be more
Mike.
blasting?
Sorry.
Will there be any more blasting with this development? And if so, when and how long do you think that would take?
Not in the phase 7 area. We're not anticipating much, if anything. But in phase 6, which was approved earlier, yes, we will be doing some blasting out there. We're actually gonna probably do just a little additional testing this week or next, just to see exactly what we have in front of us for sure. I mean, we've got a good idea, but we're just gonna go out and do a lot more testing to make sure we know exactly what we have in front of us. And we will be under the same requirements that we've had in the past and still are under those same requirements for notifications and everything up there.
Is that blasting for utilities or additional rock off the hill?
We're gonna have to, obviously the utilities, yes, because that rock's only about 3 feet down up there. And we tried to bring the grade up on Capitol Drive as fast as we could, but there's still a 3 to 4 foot cut in the top of that hill to get up to the north intersection there. So we're gonna have to drill some rock just to get to grade also, and for basements too. So we've got a pretty big undertaking coming up for inspections and all that sort of stuff coming up here very shortly.
Do you know what month we should anticipate? And I assume that we're talking with you about blasting so that we can get residents notified.
Yes, we will be getting that process started here probably in the next couple of weeks. I would suspect that in the month of April, we'll be starting to do some work up there in the phase 6 area. I think the plan approval is real close. We got to get the development agreement approved. But we're very close.
All right. Chris, go ahead. That's all right. Yeah.
So with the blasting you still have to do, would it have made sense to do all your blasting before the houses went in there? I'm just, I don't know if it impacts, I mean, it's so close to all the houses you're putting up right now as a new house. I mean, it's gonna be right there.
I'm not too concerned about it, because we've got quite a bit of experience of, you know, of that closeness. Sometimes when it does get close, you do different things with the blasting operations. And, you know, obviously we've got to be sensitive to our own neighbors, but we're probably more sensitive to the neighborhood to the north, in this operation. So that's, you know, concern with everybody around. So we take it seriously, whether it's our own neighbors or adjacent to. So, you know, everything we do is obviously well underneath any of the statutory requirements, but, you know, you still want to be well below the statutory requirements.
There's also the takedown as well. The purchase of the land is in multiple takes. We don't own or didn't own where all the land was when the blasting was occurring.
Yep.
Mr. Brining was still farming, so there were those kind of logistical limitations as well.
Good point.
Thank you.
Right. Chris, any other questions? No? All right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, just a clarification for anybody else who's watching. Can you point out where 6 is here? I think it's all that top middle section. Okay, for some reason I was thinking it was a little further over.
Nope, it's basically Capitol is that north-south street going kind of at an angle, right, to the northwest, and that's the one we'll connect in this year.
Okay.
And we're just one lot east of that is our limits of phase 6.
You said that the houses are tilting towards the lower priced product, so that's where your demand is right now, and what is that price range that we should expect?
Yes, so I have some additional stats for you guys. So for Waunakee in general, right now, from a sales side, homes that are on the market listed, there are 26 active listings now. And the average price in Waunakee is 643,000 right now. That's the average. We have 10 homes for sale right now. 9 of those 10 are below the average price. The lowest is at 389. So the variance that we're seeing now is in the high 300s to mid 400s. That's kind of the sweet spot. For the last year, just to give you guys some additional context, I have sales that occurred in $20,000 price increments. And just to show you the ones in which over 10 or more occurred in a given price point. So from 360,000 to 380,000, there were 11 sales in the last year. 380 to 400, there were 10. 441 to 460, there were 13. 460 to 480, there were 11. And 481 to 500, there were 10. This filters from 300,000 to 900,000. So if anything over 901 wouldn't be on this report. Lastly, there from 581 to 600, there were 12. Certainly others in different price points, but those are the ones that were 10 or more. There is still a pretty decent variance in price point in Waunakee, again, with some of those certainly being on the higher end. But from our perspective, kind of that high 3s to mid 4s is kind of where things are shaking out right now.
And that's where you want to be price wise?
So we want to be, if we can, dependent upon the price point. So with 7 and the Haven product, that's always in our more affordable. On the twin side, that's always on that lower echelon of the price point. So yeah, that's the kind of the general price point that we're looking at right now.
Great.
So those were Waunakee stats, right?
Correct.
How do those price points compare to some of your other subdivisions in the area?
Yeah, so, Waunakee, given what it is always on the higher average price point, just from the market in general, and then from our homes. If you go to the east side, the price point's a little bit lower. Anything touching Middleton is certainly on the higher side as well. So Waunakee is certainly the above average is the fairest way to state that.
Are we talking a 5% difference, a 10% difference, or what?
Yeah, I don't have those metrics in terms of the percentage difference, but
Can you
again-
provide that for us at some point?
Sure, yeah,
I'd be
absolutely.
curious about that.
Happy to, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
It does bring another question up because of the timing that this has been in already, and I go by Cross Plains all the time too, so I see that one, and I'm
Sure.
just curious, just on a general perception, the infill of the development from a rate of infill of the development, how would you rate this development compared to some of the other ones around the county?
Yeah, I think from a demand perspective, this is definitely one of our highest. The other one that really moves well is Acacia Ridge on the west side of Madison. So that's a very high demand area, just very different than here in terms of the surrounding amenities and things of that nature. But Heritage Hills is definitely one of our more popular and faster absorbing markets.
Other questions? Yes, go. All right. So then our job, what is our job without any other questions? Yeah, what page should I be looking at?
I'll move to recommend
Thank you.
conditional approval of the plat subject to all staff comments resolved to the satisfaction of the community development director.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
All right, next item on the agenda, Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission update. I believe that's you, Lauren.
So we have 2 items on joint plan for tomorrow evening. The first is the request from Forward Development Group that came before you tonight. The other one is an initial consultation for a CSM at 5440 Mary Lake Road.
All right. Any questions about Joint Plan Commission from anyone? No? Seeing none, last item on the agenda is adjourned. Anyone have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right,